Hi, Peter. Welcome to the Want to Taste podcast. Thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to speak about the challenges in supply chain. But before we do that, would it be possible if you can give us a short introduction in who you are and the company JS Cacao you're working for?
Yes, sure. No, thanks first of all for inviting me. My name is Pieter Schulting. Um, I live with my family in Overveen near Haarlem. I'm one of the three owners of the company JS Cocoa. Before I elaborate a bit on JS Cocoa, I've been working in the food industry from the start. I started at Unilever in the management traineeship. Then I found out that after 3 years, talking about colors of packaging and fighting retailers is not the thing I dreamed of. So I was looking for a little bit more entrepreneurial, pioneering excitement, and I moved together with my brother to Pakistan, where we set up a new company as an assignment for a Dutch investment company. A lot of supply chain in that setup, by the way. We were bringing Dutch cattle genetics to dairy farmers in the Punjab. And it's a cold supply chain, so we could spend a whole podcast on this business
Many
model alone.
challenges there. Yeah.
Exactly. I did that for 3 years, and when I came back, I started at Cargill Cocoa and Chocolate. That's where I first got a taste, not literally, yeah, also literally, but a taste of cocoa. And in 2017, I had the opportunity to buy 100% of the shares in JS Cocoa together with my two partners. JS Cocoa is a cocoa processor based in the Netherlands as well as in Ghana, where we have our fully owned daughter company that collects and consolidates and exports our cocoa raw material, which we all process in the Netherlands. And the specific about JS Cocoa is that we're a circular cocoa processor. So we buy and process not the regular cocoa bean, but we source specifically the off-spec bean, the small bean, the flat cocoa beans, which stay behind, and the cocoa industry is very much consolidated. Three big processors process around 60-70% of the total crop worldwide, and they are always looking for the big, most efficient cocoa beans. And as a result, the misfits, they stay behind, and the poor African cocoa farmer is stuck with that stock. And we have built the expertise and the solutions over our history of 100 years. This year, we started 1923. We have
Congratulations.
the means and the machine and the expertise to efficiently process these cocoa bean off-specs into cocoa butter, and nowadays also into cocoa powders, for both the food industry as well as the cosmetics and the pharmaceutical industry.
So if you look at your company, right? Do you see challenges in the supply security, for example, for these misfits, as you call them, or are you flexible, and how do you deal with those kind of challenges?
Yeah, well, the cocoa industry is first of all a challenging industry because we depend on many very smallholder cocoa farmers. In West Africa alone, there's over 2 million cocoa farmers that together supply 70% of the world cocoa crop. Very much focused on Ivory Coast and Ghana. Together they do, I think, 60% of the crop. So in two countries alone, significant part of the cocoa originates. And you can imagine if any issue arises in that country, in those two countries, that has an effect on the whole supply chain as well as the commercial global market. So all eyes are on the Ivory Coast and Ghana, not only from a crop development, weather pattern, but also things like the political environment and the stability there, as well as the economical situation, the currency development. Ghana has recently had a big devaluation of the Ghana cedi, which is rather unusual in Ghana. So yeah, from a supply chain perspective, we depend heavily on those two countries and the many cocoa farmers in the countries. If you zoom into the specific type of raw material that we buy, it's even a smaller portion of the production of a cocoa farmer. So our collection network is very much deeply penetrated into the rural area in order to consolidate sufficient volumes for quality check, evacuation, and then export to the Netherlands. So yeah, the challenge for us is really to have the network in the rural area with people on the ground, and we currently operate 1,200 brokers on our behalf in Ghana alone that have the farmer relations to collect these cocoa off spec beans, which not only involves then the physical supply chain challenges, but also the financial elements. Everything is cash based in Africa. So we also need to distribute cash in almost in cases, suitcases into the bush. And well, Africa is Africa, and the bush is next level. So that also brings some supply challenges of cash into the bush.
But you do manage to secure supply to your customers in Europe. I mean, I can imagine that is one of the challenges to assure that you have enough stocks for your customers.
Yeah, yeah. One of our differentiators in the markets, so on the sales side, is our flexibility. Like I said, the cocoa industry is largely consolidated, where these big giants run very efficient, large production runs, and have very little room to steer correct if there's changes in demand. Since we are a smaller company with also a smaller production setup, it is for us a little bit easier to be flexible and responsive to customer demands and changes. Yeah, having said that, we have the challenge of the supply, so we need to work with buffer stock, safety stocks. Of course, there's additionally the challenge of the crop size of season. So you need to be able to overcome the period that there's no production coming from origin. So you have to keep safety stocks, which we do. And from a quality perspective, it's always better to keep the stocks in Europe instead of in Africa, where the humidity and the temperature are not favorable for the development of unfavorable elements in the quality of the cocoa beans and specifically the cocoa butter. So we keep safety stocks in the Netherlands. We have a wonderful system with barges lying on the Zaan, on the water, and the water is cooling the beans to avoid further development of free fatty acids in the fat. So that's a way of securing our supply to our factory, and from our factory to customer. Well, we're actually in a bit of a change at the moment. We have always been working make to order, and taking the flexibility from the way we produce. We're now also trying to make a little bit more efficient production runs, and therefore we're also moving a little bit more to make to stock solution, especially for the blocked cocoa butter, so the boxes of 25 kg. Where on the other hand, we also do a lot of bulk in full truckloads. But for the boxed materials, we already had a number of customers for which we are keeping customer-specific stock, but we will now move to a model in which we basically keep stock. We produce to stock, and from the stock we deliver to customers. And we're trying to make an effort in making that stock as standard as possible to avoid that we have a very big number of stock keeping units. So that's a process that we're currently exploring and changing.
So your supply chain, actually, it's quite a long supply chain. It goes from the guys that go in the bushes that secure the raw material, the fruit itself,
Correct.
up to the processing there partially and transporting it to Europe, and then potentially even further specialization in Europe into specific grades for different customers. So actually, it's a super complex supply chain. If I refer that to what we see in Want to Taste on a daily basis, is that the customers are actually thinking that everything is instantly available. So they have a special term for that, which is called the consumerization of the B2B customer, where they actually expect, like Amazon, that if they order today, then it should be there tomorrow. So there's, and I think that is what you're highlighting, is that is something where also continuous education of the customer needs to happen, to make sure that it's not a product that you can create out of the sky, but it has a long run in development and in processing.
No, true, and we also see that trend from a B2B, where still a major part of our customer portfolio in our business depends on, which is bulk, and there needs to be alignment. On the other hand, the more B2C kind of setup, we also see as a development, and we have different models to deal with that. And one of the models is that we keep a stock in consignment in faraway places. For imported markets like the US, we have local stocks which are under our consignment, but at the location of our local representative, in order to keep the time to market short. So that's one of the models that we operate. On the other hand, the online development is also picking up fast, also in the B2B. I guess you know all about it with Want to Taste as well. And that's why we also work with Want to Taste as a partner, in order to keep both information as well as stocks readily available and broadly available to customers that have maybe somewhat smaller urgent demands, but we can respond in a fast manner also to that part of the market.
Yeah, our time has come to an end already, Pieter. Thank you so much for taking the time to have this podcast with us. And for sure, we'll be in contact, and we hope our listeners are inspired actually by your company. I love what you're doing. The circular thought is really what we need as a world. So thank you very much for your time today.